Good morning and welcome to the business of smart local energy systems. My name is Guy Newey. I'm Director of Strategy and Performance at the Energy Systems Catapult, who are involved in lots of the projects thinking about smart local energy systems and how we can make them work. This is the, I think, second session this week of the series looking at the potential and the various different aspects of smart local energy systems, which is hosted by UKRI and in association with Net Zero Week, which I think is KTN event. Absolutely brilliant day to have this discussion, because I'm sure those of you eagle-eyed will have noticed that the government released the smart systems implementation plan, or the next phase of that, and the digitization strategy. Although I say they released it, they released a press release. They haven't yet released any of the detail of the document, which obviously is slightly frustrating for those of us who want to get into the detail, but also a relief for those of us who are chairing panels and thinking you're going to have to read the whole thing before we do the panel. So it's a blessing. So what we're aiming to do to today's session is we're aiming to highlight some of the fantastic companies and some of the brilliant thinking that's trying to unlock the potential of smart local energy systems. And we've got an incredible set of companies and experts to talk through today. The session is going to be in two bits. The first bit is going to be a series of presentations. The first one from Gavin Starks, the CEO of Icebreaker One, then from Matthew Bolton from Pivot Power. Then Damien Kelly from Innovate UK is going to talk about some of the experience on the work that they've been pursuing in this area, and then Maria Shamina and Tim Brownholt-Spate from the Tyndall Centre in Manchester are going to talk about their understanding, looking at it from some of the research. So that's going to be the first half of it, and they're just going to do a small presentation. And I would encourage you to put questions in. So I will try and squeeze in one, maybe two questions at the end of the presentations if we've got time, just to test anything. So put your Q&A in, and we will gather it in the chat, and if there's time, we'll keep to that. We've got a lot to squeeze in, and I'm keen to keep to time, so we'll have to be flexible on that. And then the second half, which will start just before 11 o'clock, is a panel discussion with another cast of fantastic companies operating in this area, and I will introduce them as we get closer to it. So just a couple of bits of housekeeping. Put your questions into the chat Q&A function, and they'll all come to me, and I will curate them and choose the most tricky ones to put our experts and our companies on the spot. Let's really get into the detail and test the potential of this area. Great. Right. First of all, I'm going to hand over to Gavin, who's going to talk through his experience with Icebreaker One. Gavin.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gavin Starks, and created an organization called Icebreaker One. Our mission here is to help make data work harder to deliver net zero. I'll expand a little bit about what that means. But just by way of introduction, my background is in both running the Open Data Institute, which I helped to set up in 2012, and co-chairing the development of a thing called the Open Banking Standard, which you will likely be using, even if you're not aware you're using it. It's a way of enabling data interoperability across the financial system. And prior to both of those things, I ran a company where we codified all the different environmental standards and put them behind a web open API, which basically means it's making it easy to calculate the carbon footprint of anything. So my bit today is mostly about data and data interoperability. Next slide, please. Really what we're looking at here is something that's, on one hand, it might feel very technical, but actually it's not really about technology at all. What we're seeing now is a sort of Cambrian explosion of different ways of producing energy and vast increase in the different uses of energy as electric vehicles come into the fore. So what we really need here is a market architecture for national data infrastructure, and energy is right at the heart of that. And there's a lot of talk about open data and so on. And what I want to do, next slide please, is just unpack first of all, what do we mean by different kinds of data? And there's three categories broadly, and this is something we created at the Open Data Institute. Firstly, there's open data, and to be clear, open data is data that anyone can use for any purpose for free. And that obviously has a whole range of things that do fit in that category. It has a whole range of things that really don't fit in that category. So the second tier here we're talking about is what we call shared data. And that's where the data can be made available. And here the nuance maybe is the difference between open data and open access to commercial data. So the data must be licensed under a shared data license. And that's a primary part of our focus here, as millions of different assets need to be discoverable and systems need to talk to each other. There's a whole ecosystem here of assets and systems that need to be interoperable. And there's a third category of closed data, which are things that don't leave an organization. Next slide, please. And then when we look at this through the lens of climate, how do we drive towards our net zero targets? We've got a legally binding target to hit net zero by 2050. That actually means that a lot of our investments over the next decades need to be considering net zero in their design. So at the point of commissioning, at the point of construction, at the point of operation, everything now needs to move to net zero, but across what categories? So here we're looking at asset level information, geospatial, environmental data, climate data, and policy, and across a whole range of different areas. I'm going to focus today on energy, obviously. Next slide, please. And what we've been doing over the last year is building a solution to enable data sharing across the whole of the energy ecosystem. And this has been funded partly through UKRI and their SBRI competition, partly through BEIS and the Energy Data Visibility Project, and partly through Climate Kick and other funders. Next slide, please. What we're trying to do here, as the complexity of the system increases, is enable people who have data to increase the market for their data. So if you've got some information, we know lots of people building sort of big data lakes, they've got their own database and so on. How can we make it easier to find and access that information in a market-wide context? And then for data users, for a local city planner, I'll come into this example in a second. If you're trying to work out how do we deploy low carbon technologies, what's the potential for flexibility markets in my area? How does that interface with our EV strategy and our deployment of low carbon technologies? How can I get access to that, whether the data is open data, so it's free, or whether it's commercial data? Next slide, please. So over the last year, we've formed a range of advisory groups which represent industry and represent the users. So the users here being both on the supply side and on the demand side. And we've anchored around a core use case, which is a local authority planner who's thinking about how can we deploy and move forward with our net zero strategy for our region. They need to be able to search for all types of data, find out what exists and go through and access it. And whether that's data from the millions of assets around solar and electric vehicles and renewables and so on, whether it's the DNOs, aggregators, application vendors, there's a huge ecosystem. And this sort of map in the middle here, we've mapped out over 9,000 organizations just in the energy sector. And that's before we start really layering in transport on top of that. Next slide, please. So what we're trying to build here, and I should say Icebreaker One is an independent nonprofit, is to catalyze the delivery of an open marketplace for energy data that supports the needs of the sector. So we're very much for the sector and co-created with the sector. We've been, as I say, we've been running advisory groups across policy, against business models, against technology, and so on. What we want to arrive at here is cohesion and interoperability across the energy system. And it's a bit like, I draw an analogy, it's a bit crude, but at the early days of the energy ecosystem itself, there were lots of different systems. They were not necessarily interoperable, different voltages and so on. We needed a way to bring them all together and create that interoperability of energy systems. Here, what we're doing in the 21st century is turn that into an interoperable for the data systems that link our energy systems together as the whole system itself digitizes. So you've got the Energy Digitalization Task Force, for example, there that is pushing forward on this agenda, and we're trying to operationalize that. The way that we want to do that, the way we are doing that, is to bake it around the actual user needs, the actual use cases from the market to say, what is it you really need? There's a lot of very wonderful research projects out there. There's a lot of very spectacular technologies in AI and so on and so forth. We're doing, the, if you like, the much duller job of just plumbing. How do we get access to the data and enable as many people across and many organizations across the system to access it as possible? Next slide, please. And just to give a sense of that complexity, this is a very high level schematic of who's in the system. So obviously we've got the generation and production and the transportation of energy at the moment. It's not just electricity, it's gas as well. You've got a blend of regulated non-monopoly actors and regulated monopoly actors. And today, obviously, we've just seen the national grid is to lose its role as an independent operator. So there's a very dynamic market emerging around this. There's a whole range of activities that the DNOs are undertaking, and we're fully supportive of their activities. But also, as we move forward in this, you know, the number of different connections that they're going to have to make is vast, especially when you look at flexibility markets and so on. And there's a whole range of new needs coming to market as well. Next slide, please. So again, just building on that, we're moving from a situation where you have a relatively small number of generators and you know, buildings and commercial buildings and domestic buildings as being the primary users of energy, to one where we've got millions of assets. You've got complex provisioning right down at the smart meter level. You've got things like GDPR apply, which I'm sure when people have been deploying large scale energy systems, they weren't really imagining what GDPR might do to their business models, right the way through to, you know, thousands of connected organizations at the ESO balancing level. Here, the assets themselves, all of the assets in this system are going to have some kind of data component to them. So the question then is, if we want to analyze them and keep the lights on and address things like our national security, you know, these are huge issues. It's not like the materially different to the wild west of the web, which we've experienced over the last 30 years. We can't just say, well, move fast and break things. We need to move fast and make sure the lights stay on. Next slide, please. So what we're doing here, just to say what we're doing and what we're not doing. So what we're not doing here is we're not storing any of the energy data itself. It's really about creating a trust network between the different organizations to say, do you have permission to access X, Y, or Z piece of data? And then as we move forward here, the process of saying, do you have permission means, are you contractually covered through the legal conditions, through the licensing models? Is liability covered? Have we addressed privacy concerns, and so on and so forth? So it's already a highly complex set of questions. The good news is we've got a blueprint for this from what has happened previously in open banking, and we're actually now in beta today with different organizations, including people like National Grid and SSE. We're also not building any of the apps or the end solutions. In fact, we're supportive here of the MedApps competition, the Modernizing Energy Data Applications. And as that moves forward, as people build forward into a kind of app store type of environment, we will help those different actors connect. And also, we're not setting the price of data, to be clear. We're about managing those connections. Next slide, please. We've only got a couple more to go here. In terms of what we're enabling, we feel that this is part of our national infrastructure to help deliver the plans for digitalizing our energy sector. We're also aligned across a whole range of different initiatives. It's a smart data strategy. We've got our national data strategy. You've got digital twins. You've got this Centre for Digital Built Britain. You've got the green growth agenda. And it actually, we've managed to, because we've got a lot of the same team members across different projects, we've managed to align this with what's happening with the Financial Conduct Authority and Open Finance, which is how to make open interoperability between the rest of the financial system, including insurance, pensions, and so on. So what we're seeing here is this linkage emerging of we're going to be able to connect these. Is that when we're sitting there trying to work out where do we deploy capital to deliver this future energy system, we should be able to do it at a national level, joined up with the regional level, joined up with local action. And that level of, if we can get to that level of interoperability here, we will enable the same kind of innovation, the same architecture of innovation as the web has enabled. Next slide, please. But just to finish off on this is not really a technology problem. It's an operational problem. And so the pieces of the jigsaw that we're pulling together here look at the legal frameworks, look at the security protocols, looking at how data rights work and so on. Yes, we also look at the technology piece and through the BEIS funded work, we've been looking at data standards for energy data itself to make sure that people can at least choose things which are going to be interoperable. And so the things that we're going to be moving from beta into pilots over the coming weeks are an energy data search engine. So you'll be able to search for data, and that's open to everyone. And then if you find open data, obviously you can go straight through and use it. If it goes to commercial data, then it plugs into this broader system where all of these different issues are going to be addressed. So just to finish off, last slide, please. The critical thing here is this is not going to be a short journey. This is a really big transformation of and part of the digitalization journey for the UK. If we get this right, and I think now is the time to really lean into this and say, how do we get this right? We can start to unlock action at all tiers of the society, from right down to the local level. How do we load balance a street? How do we deploy renewables in our community, right the way up to the national priorities? So I will finish there. If you want to get in touch, we've got our website there. We're on LinkedIn and Twitter, and my email address is just gavin@icebreaker1.org. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, Gavin. That's great. Just two very quick clarification questions in the time that we've got. So one from Frank Inglis, who said, "Are you involved with Energy Web token and blockchain applications?"
No, and in fact, nothing we're doing is dependent on blockchain. I think one of the challenges here for everyone, I should say, I love blockchain as a technology, but as a business person, I think it's got a long way to go before it becomes ubiquitous. And it's quite expensive for people to implement at this stage. I think it's got a lot of potential in the future, and we certainly would see some of the blockchain solutions that are out there between the different organizations. So it's an incredibly thin layer. And what we're trying to do here
to put
I'll go into the chat and address those other ones. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, Gavin, that was absolutely fascinating and fantastic to see. And the comparison with open banking is extraordinarily exciting in helping address some of the challenges we're talking about. Right, over to Matthew Bolton. Matthew from Pivot Power.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm Matthew from Pivot Power, here to give you a quick introduction to one of the smart local energy system demonstrator projects, Energy Superhub Oxford. Next slide, please. Before talking about the project specifically, please just let me do a very quick introduction to Pivot Power. In 2018, we identified an innovative opportunity to open up the transmission network, national grids, extra high voltage network, the kind of motorways of the electricity grid, if you like, which historically has been used to connect centralized power generation plants and transport that power to regional substations where distribution network operators, DNOs, take care of it and distribute it to homes and businesses. We identified 40 locations across England and Wales where National Grid's configuration could open up affordable 60 megawatt connections. And we decided we could use these connection points for a hybrid business model, at each location combining a 50 megawatt battery storage plant with a private wire network supporting mass scale EV charging. In 2019, we became part of EDF Renewables, and we are now busy in the early stages of rolling out this portfolio of sites. Next slide, please. And Oxford is the first of these project sites. And as a demonstrator project under the Smart Local Energy System program, it's demonstrating scalable innovation in power, in heat, and in transport. And I'll touch briefly on what we're doing in each space. But the opening up of the transmission network is one of the key themes underpinning the whole thing. And in 2017, I believe National Grid received something like 17 connection applications in total. We submitted 40 on our own in the space of a few months in early 2018. And since then, they've received hundreds of additional connection applications. So that the transmission network is changing. And then the second key theme is smart software. So machine learning based algorithms making decisions about when to switch on and off flexible assets, be they batteries, EV chargers, heat pumps, as market price signals indicate that energy is plentiful or scarce. The other thing to point out is that this is very much a consortium project. We're working alongside a flow battery company, a heat pump company, a software company on a much broader and more ambitious project scope than we would have done if left to our own devices. We have Oxford University bringing academic scrutiny to the impact the project, and of course its UKRI funding has on the local community. And crucially, we have Oxford City Council articulating a strategic framework and direction which has energized the whole consortium and engaged the local community. Next slide, please. Oxford's the ideal context for a project such as this, that they're among the first UK cities to officially declare a climate emergency. They have committed to a 2040 zero carbon Oxford and to the 2021 introduction of an initial zero emission zone. And they've mobilized a citizen-led climate change assembly to help plot their course to these targets. Next, please. Right, on the power front, the project's innovation comes not just from it being the first transmission connected battery in the country, but from it being the largest hybrid lithium ion and vanadium flow battery in the world. The flow battery market is still relatively nascent compared with lithium ion, and it obviously doesn't have the auto industry driving its expansion, but it offers really interesting possibilities for more easily scalable, i.e. longer duration and non-degrading power. Whereas you expect to replace your lithium ion batteries after, say, 10 years, the vanadium electrolyte has as much electrical capacity in year 10, 20, or 30 as it does on day one. The project is exploring ways that Infinity's vanadium can do some of the heavy lifting, especially in providing ancillary services like frequency response to add to the longevity of the lithium ion as well. And Habitat Energy have developed a new machine learning based algorithmic trading platform, which will optimize this hybrid battery as it trades in wholesale markets and in the balancing mechanism. Next slide, please. In terms of transport, the project will be the first in the world coming directly off the transmission system. We're hearing over these days some of the challenges to local networks that trickle charging at home represents for EVs, but the power requirements for rapid charging are a whole different ballgame. You put a single ultra-fast charger in the car park of a typical supermarket, and it can draw as much power as the entire store. So when everybody's driving EVs, rapid charging needs to be available at scale. No one's going to sit in the queue behind another car or two. In this picture, the dark blue shows the initial network we're building, starting at National Grid's substation down in the southeast where the battery is located, running up to the Ring Road and around to the council's park and ride in Redbridge in the southwest of the city centre. Initially, we'll have 20 superfast chargers and 30 slower AC chargers, but critically, the cable we're laying will be able to support over 100 rapid chargers in the future as demand grows. The hub can be scaled. The light blue shows the opportunities we're already seeing for expanding the private wire network. Discussions coming along really nicely with bus operators and local logistics companies. And the council's using the project as an opportunity to lead by example. It's migrating the first 40 of its fleet, and that's a mixture of cars, vans, a rubbish truck to electric, and operating a try before you buy EV scheme for local taxi drivers. And we're going to be working with the council and with Habitat to explore what additional running cost savings the e-fleet could make by smart charging, by optimizing its vehicle charging activities against a half-hourly time of use tariff. Next, please. And that time of use tariff optimization is also the link to the innovation in the heat part of the project. 60 houses previously equipped with night storage heaters have been retrofitted with shared loop ground source heat pumps. And as well as sort of state-of-the-art smart controls which adapt the heating of the house to user preferences and learn the property's thermal behaviors, our heat partner Kensa have developed new algorithms to further optimize each heat pump schedule against a half-hourly time of use tariff. And as well as demonstrating the potential savings that such optimization can make, a key focus of the project and a key contribution from Oxford University is exploring consumer attitudes to these flexible tariffs and in particular understanding what barriers there may be to their adoption. There is no doubt that smart local systems need engaged users willing to adopt new devices and adapt their behaviors. Next slide, please. Part of today's brief was to give a sense not just of Pivot's journey so far, but of the growth we see ahead. I don't want to sound complacent, but I think like most companies in the battery storage and EV charging space, we think the opportunities for growth are pretty dramatic. There's just over 1 gigawatt of battery storage operational in the UK at the moment. I'm not including pumped hydro here. And 2 out of National Grid's latest 4 future energy scenarios, published just a couple of weeks ago, expect that to be 20 gigawatts by 2035. As that Bloomberg chart for EV demand shows, it's clear EV charging demand is going to grow exponentially. That's just the passenger car numbers. With recent announcements about electric HGVs, that increase is going to be even more dramatic. So our first site has just gone live. Our second one near Sittingbourne in Kent will be going live shortly. We have sites getting ready for construction now in Birmingham and Coventry, and we have 36 more sites to go. So we see plenty of growth ahead. Next slide, please. We were also asked to touch on barriers to growth. So I won't go into the details of the COVID impacts on the project. I think I'd rather just highlight the real challenges regulators face in providing a regime of rules and charges and incentives which appropriately integrate goals of decarbonisation with those of keeping bills low. The energy system is full of long-term assets that need some operating cost stability and certainty for investment cases to make sense. At the same time, these assets can be very quick to develop and deploy, and new rules that look sensible at the time may rapidly appear misjudged if the landscape has dramatically evolved. So I think how well we're able collectively to evolve that system of charges and incentives is going to have an enormous impact on how quickly we can build an energy system that has the extra flexibility that the dominance of renewables is going to require. Next slide, please. At the heart of smart local energy systems is, I believe, the idea that pace of change required needs tailored and triggered action at a local level rather than kind of waiting for national breakthroughs and schemes to solve the problem. Apart from anything, a lot of the change has to come from changes in consumer choices and behaviors, and that engagement is best done by reaching out to people in the communities where they live and work. The inspiring part of Energy Superhub Oxford, for me, and I think my consortium partners, has been feeling part of that wider Oxford effort to clean things up, to become a flagship city. So far, certainly as Pivot Power, we've been quite heads down, getting our battery installed, working out our private wire cable route. But now that these assets are taking shape, now that the battery is in, the heat pumps are on, the council EVs are bought, and the charging hub is being built, we can lift our heads up a bit and start thinking about how we're going to use these very concrete asset installations to trigger a wider awareness across the city of what changes individuals can make to assist the decarbonisation effort. It's inspiring to see how the city is stitching together its own pattern of policy changes, its zero emission zone, its workplace parking charges and others. And we're working with them to see how we can engage most effectively with Oxford residents, with its businesses and its schools, to make sure that the ripples of change the project is sending out have as big an impact as possible. And we're really hoping that other cities, when we come along with our batteries and our private wire networks, will choose to do the same. So anyway, thank you for your time. I hope that's given you an idea of what we're up to with the Oxford Superhub.
Thanks, Matthew. That is an incredibly exciting project, and you've described it calmly and beautifully. And I suspect at times you've been banging your head against various different walls in particular. There's a few questions that have come in. I'm just going to take one of them and probably broaden it out. One from Jim Allen has said, how did you go about identifying where there are affordable 60 megawatt connections to the transmission grid? Was this available via National Grid platform? I guess that leads to the wider question, which you kind of touched on at the start, is how easy is it to kind of to interact with grid at the transmission scale to unlock these? You talked about some of the kind of very significant changes in numbers.
Okay, let me take the first bit first. So when we first realized there were these tertiary connections on supergrid transformers, so that's when I said certain substations have the right configuration, that's what we were looking out for. So we were doing a fair amount of Google aerial view searching and sort of going to grid with some targeted questions saying we think this site looks appropriate. By the end of 2018, they were already starting to publish an online asset register that identified not just these tertiary connections, but which ones could be available, fault headroom and stuff. So it's become a lot easier. And I think that kind of reflects the transformation they've been through as part of this journey. To a degree, we've kind of prodded them along so that they can now cope with much smaller customers like us and much smaller projects like these. These are unusual projects for National Grid, and we're putting pressure on because for us, having to wait for 18 months for a connection is a long time. For National Grid, providing a connection within 18 months is something of a record. So they've adapted their processes a lot internally. I would just caution, actually sort of commissioning and connecting to the transmission network as a whole, again, a whole different ball game from connecting to the distribution network.
That's brilliant, Matthew, and obviously links with some of the points that Gavin was making about the availability of data and all of those issues. There's a few other questions come in, but I'm not going to be able to but ask Matthew to write some answers, and we'll hopefully copy and paste those back to the main section. But that was a fascinating insight into a great project and really interesting company. Right. Damien, over to Damien Kelly from Innovate UK. Over to you.
Thanks, Guy. Good morning, everybody. I'm Damien Kelly. I'm an innovation lead on the Prospering from the Energy Revolution team. And I'm lucky enough to be able to work with many of the projects we have as part of our P4 program. Over the next few minutes, I'm just going to take you on a quick exploration across the P4 program, get as detailed as I can. Next slide, please. So as I'm sure you are all patently aware, the clock is now audibly ticking for us to take action to avoid catastrophic climate change. The 4 big Ds of energy, so decarbonisation, digitalisation, decentralisation and democratisation, has been slowly chipping away at the energy system for over a decade. But now we really do need to move up through the gears and deliver a net zero energy system. The opportunity is huge for smart integrated energy systems to not only deliver a lower cost net zero energy system, but also to deliver better outcomes for citizens. Next slide, please. So the Prospering for the Energy Revolution programme is a part of the government's Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund. It was launched in 2019 and the programme will run until 2023. So we're just about over halfway through the programme now. The programme is supported by just over £100 million of public funding, which is also being matched by industry funding. We've got over 50 projects right across the UK, and the aim of the programme is to show what works. Today and throughout the course of the week, you're going to be hearing from lots of the project partners and project participants. You'll be hearing what works, what doesn't work, what the challenges are, what the barriers are, but also what the outlook is and growth opportunities for businesses. Next slide, please. So the Prospering from the Energy Revolution programme. So what we're looking to do is to prove local energy business models that are investable and scalable, that deliver cleaner, cheaper energy, that build prosperous and resilient communities, that benefit the whole system, and that use integrated, intelligent approaches to do that. We're doing that, or should I say the projects and project partners are doing that, by accelerating the development of new products and services to commercialization. What we're looking to do is to build UK leadership globally around smart local energy systems and the delivery of net zero. We're looking to export best practice. And mostly, and most importantly, we're looking to export UK businesses, UK services, and UK products. And we're also looking directly as part of the programme to unlock a significant amount of private investment. Next slide, please. And so we're working with over 150 organisations, or partnering with over 150 organisations as part of the programme. And that includes over 25 local authorities and local bodies, over 30 energy providers, over 30 digital service companies, more than 35 energy service companies, and 40 other organisations which sit across different sectors. We're also working with more than 40 universities, many of which are a part of projects and programmes, but also with the Strathclyde-led Energy Revolution Academic Consortium. We also partner with the Energy Systems Catapult, who are supporting us with the ERIS, so the Energy Revolution Integration Service, and they are working with all of the projects and partners as well. Next slide, please. And so, as I said, we've got projects right across the UK, and they're across a number of different programs. And so smart local energy systems and the concept of smart local energy systems is the sort of linchpin of the program. And we've got 3 big demonstrator projects. And so we've just heard Matthew from the ESO project in Oxford. And we also heard from Melanie yesterday, who's from the LEO project, so the Local Energy Oxfordshire project. And we've also got the Reflex project, which is up in Orkney. These 3 big demonstrator projects are looking at different ranges of business models and different ranges of solutions to deliver smart local energy systems for those regions. We also have 10 detailed design projects, and these are looking to design energy systems and various business models across different regions and different areas across the country. We've also got 16 key technology component projects. These are technical projects or businesses developing technical solutions, which will form a fundamental component of an intelligent and smart energy system. In 2019, we ran a program called the Concept Designs, and this was the early stage development of options for smart local energy systems, and this was the precursor to the detailed design program. Outside of the Smart Local Energy Systems program, we've also got the Modernising Energy Data program, which led off or came from some of the recommendations of the Energy Data Task Force, where we've been collaborating with our colleagues in Ofgem and Bays, and that has led on to the creation of the Open Energy Platform, and Gavin, who we heard from earlier. And as Gavin also mentioned, we've got a number of MedApps projects, and so they are different businesses developing applications using different ranges of energy data from across the energy system. Next slide, please. So smart local energy systems. So what is a smart local energy system? You probably might be asking, and I'm sure we all ask ourselves this, and all have different understandings. But for me, a smart local energy system is about the planning, delivery, and operation of smart energy systems for local areas with local people. Now, here on the screen, we've got what I see as some of the key components of smart local energy systems and smart local energy systems projects. So typically projects are starting with some form of local area energy planning. So looking at what the options are for that region and that area to decarbonize. So what can they do what can they do in relation to planning for the area, taking consideration of the characteristics and resources within that area. Community engagement and stakeholder engagement is a significantly important part of smart local energy systems projects, not only at the planning stage, but throughout the operation and delivery of smart local energy systems. Finance and investment from a holistic perspective is very important and is a key characteristic for smart local energy systems. It's not looking at individual technologies or projects, but looking at the holistic system. We also have smart local energy systems looks across the vectors. So not just electricity, but we're also looking at transport, heat, storage and flexibility and hydrogen. We've got a significant number of technology as part of the program and as part of a smart local energy system, including virtual power plants, building management systems, local network controls. And energy efficiency also plays a crucial role in delivering net zero and also in delivering smarter local energy systems. The energy systems, smart local energy systems projects are across lots of different types of regions and areas across the UK. So typically across communities and homes and businesses, but also some industrial areas and areas including industry. And finally, from a markets perspective, smart local energy systems are typically looking at flexibility markets, but also looking at a whole range of local area energy market opportunities and architectures. Next slide, please. So there's a significant benefit. There's a significant benefit to be had by delivering energy systems in a more intelligent and localized way. So we've got significant cost saving opportunity by better matching renewable energy with demand and flexibility, by avoiding network constraints and utilizing networks more efficiently. Not only can we significantly increase the speed of delivery of net zero, but also we can do it in an equitable way. And we absolutely have to take people with us and not design the system for people, but design the system with people. We can also deliver net zero in a joined up way that actually looks at a local area and looks at what the local needs and characteristics and resources are in that area and delivers design solutions for that area. And a smarter, more local way of delivering energy can also significantly help the UK's regions to level up by creating jobs and business growth across our regions in the UK. So next slide, please. And so finally, I just want to touch upon some of the barriers. And as I said, I'm lucky enough to work with a lot of the projects, and a lot of the projects have faced a lot of challenges. I think Matthew touched upon one, but he's not alone. And these are just some of the key barriers at the moment. And the first one is around sort of policy and regulation, and will probably always be a continual challenge. But at the moment, we've got a lot of people who are either hedging their bets or sitting on their hands because we know what the experts are saying, we know what the models say, we know what scientists say we need to do now, but what we don't yet know is what government is going to say we need to do now. I think as Guy said, we're starting to see some of those publications, which are late, and hopefully we'll see a whole raft more over the next few months to really give us a plan to deliver net zero. We also need policy to be joined up, so not just across energy and the different areas of energy, but also across buildings, across planning, across agriculture, and across mobility. And probably one of the key points for business is business needs policy to be consistent. So we're going to be seeing a whole range of policy and regulatory change over the next decade or so. But what business really does need is some consistency and the ability to understand what the direction of travel is. And that's something we've definitely not had over the last couple of years. Markets, so today's markets have not been designed for a decarbonized, decentralized, and digitized energy system. So we really do need to look at the roles and responsibilities in a net zero energy system and design a market that fits those roles and responsibilities. Speed, so we are not moving fast enough. We have legislated for net zero, but we really do across the board and from the top down need to significantly increase the speed of delivery. And finally, just to touch upon innovation, and I'm sure all of the demonstration projects can echo this, but transformative system innovation is incredibly difficult, if not impossible to deliver at the moment. it is just really hard to do anything that pushes the envelope across the energy system. We've got some disjointed sandboxes and derogations, but we really do need to take a view as to how we test those transformative solutions to innovate for net zero. And I think we all know that nobody has the answers now, but we really do need a way to rapidly test what the best solutions might be. And finally, just to touch upon the sort of change processes that we have across policy and regulation. They're largely favor and are dominated by the incumbents, and they are very difficult for innovators to get involved in. It is a black hole almost, and it's a full-time job to try and keep abreast of all of these change initiatives. And it's just impossible for an early stage startup or innovators to get involved. And so it's an area we also need to look at. So that is me. Thank you, Guy.
Thanks, Damien. Your call for policy has been answered by government dumping all of the code reform smart system plans as you do. So this is a lesson to future panelists. What you ask for almost immediately appears. This is the power of these events. Right, I'm going to hand over straight to Maria and Tim from the Tyndall Centre.
Thank you, Guy. Hello, everyone. So I'm Maria Shamina. I'm a reader in energy and sustainability at the Tyndall Centre for Climate Change Research at the University of Manchester. So Tim Brandholtz-Spate, who's my colleague at Tyndall, and I will do a double act today and tell you a little bit about our research for the Energy Rev Consortium. And Damien mentioned it, it's part of PIFA, the PIFA programme. And in this particular piece of research, we're looking at different business models that currently exist in the UK local energy systems sector. And we're trying to look at the three layers of those business models, so environmental, economic, and social. Next slide, please. So before we delve into the UK perspective and the survey itself, I'll just give you a few insights from our overview of existing data, so secondary data on SLES projects around the world. Next slide, please. So what we found by looking at that kind of projects around the world is that it's equally challenging for them to be commercially successful elsewhere as it is in the UK, perhaps unsurprisingly. What surprised us was how smartness was interpreted in different regions of the world. For instance, in the West, smartness is interpreted as more advanced, like advanced technology, for example, ICT, information and communication technologies. But in East Asia, smartness for energy projects was interpreted more as conscious users, switching to that kind of project, so investing in those projects for the benefit of the community. So it's a slightly different understanding of what smartness means. And perhaps that's one of the reasons that's behind another difference. So in the West, business models pay more attention to the economic layer, while in Asia, East Asia in particular, they pay more attention to the social layer. And environmental layer, unfortunately, remains underexplored and underreported, I think, everywhere in the world. So another interesting finding was the localness element, which is also differently interpreted in different parts of the world. So, for example, community participation isn't really part of it in some projects, and asset ownership is only part of localness is in Europe. So that was something we found interesting. So moving on to the next slide, Tim will take you through some of the findings from our survey.
Yeah, thanks very much, Maria. That's right. So from the global perspective to the UK, what we're doing is surveying local energy systems in the UK, but running on a kind of commercial basis today. So we've heard about some of the great demonstration and pilot projects already in this session. But what we're doing in this bit of research is looking at people and making things work without special grant funding and trying to see what they're doing, what's out there, and what we can learn for the future of smart local energy systems. We're interviewing people via Zoom and similar platforms and have our questions online. And as Maria said, can we do the next transition? Next. Great, we're using this thing called the triple layered business model canvas, which takes the standard economic business model canvas interpretation of business models, and that adds an environmental layer, which looks at different aspects of the business model's environmental impacts, and also the social aspects. So we're asking questions about who the customers are, what the governance is, what kind of jobs are created, that kind of thing. And finally, just next, this is work in progress. So the survey is still ongoing. We're still getting some more things in. These are just the emerging findings today. There'll be more to come later this year. Next slide, please. So firstly, we're looking at what does the local energy systems mean today in practice. Well, most of the systems in our study so far are at the campus group of buildings or village or neighborhood scale. That's the two big bars there. So smaller than a whole town or city, in fact. So we kind of think industrial estates, housing developments, maybe a whole village, something like that. The workforce is a mixture of local and national workers. We're finding maintenance contracts for kind of hardwired systems often go to national companies, but there is kind of an aspiration, a desire from system operators to have more local jobs and also more local workforce they feel is just beneficial for the system for a quick, speedy response when things goes wrong. But this would need quite a bit of training to make this feasible across the UK. Next slide, please. So on the energy side of these energy systems, what are they doing? Well, electricity generation on the left there is the highest, the most popular single activity. Next, please. So we've got on the left though, of these different activities, we've got a kind of conventional energy value chain, you might say, from generation, distribute and supply to an end user. But on the right, next please, we've got a whole range of other energy services and revenue streams, including energy efficiency, kind of demand side flexibility, EV charging, storage, lots of other bits and pieces up and running on a commercial basis today. And so far, next please, we've got 11 systems which integrate generation, distribution and supply within a local area, and 3 of these are multi-vector as well. Great, next please. So smartness, how smart are these systems which are up and running today? In short answer, not very smart yet, as you might expect, given that these are not pilots and haven't got special funding to do what they do. So on the one hand, quite a few are using new technologies and trying new activities and even some time of use tariffs for customers. On the other hand, we found very little to no evidence of prosumerism, peer-to-peer trading and these things. And we noticed also that quite a few of the participants in our study were kind of reluctant to describe what they did as smart, even when they're doing quite sophisticated stuff with data on their own system. Next, please. Again. And so this is kind of the number of features along the bottom, most systems having 0, 1 or 2 kind of these smart features. Next, please. Environmental impacts, as we found globally, not so much monitoring of this, particularly with regard to waste and kind of the end of life of equipment issues, which are seen to be a bit in the future. Partly it's also because some of these systems are operated by bigger companies which don't just do energy, and so they don't maybe have a breakdown just of the waste and impacts of their energy system. Next, please. Finally, for me, we wanted to look a little bit about the value creation. Who do these systems create value for, and how and when as well? When does the value come? And well, the customers, of course, get energy. Although for some of them, where the system is hardwired, like it's a heat network or a local private wire microgrid, they might not always have much choice in that. So we have a quote from an operator saying, well, if they don't buy electricity from us, they don't have any. So that's the value for them. But it's clear that a lot of people stress that this whole kind of smart operation of their existing resources as just good business practice, making the most of existing resources, saving costs. And we're keen to say that they pass this on to their customers too. So there's a kind of an immediate win-win. There's a thought, though, that a lot of the drivers in policy of smart local energy systems are about saving future costs and decarbonisation, so how to sell that now. And finally, for me, just the environmental credentials. It's interesting that was reported as being more important for business customers more than residential. They were seem to be more switched on to making sure they had ticked their green agenda. Over to Maria, and next, please.
Thanks, Tim. So what are we going to do next with this work? So we'll carry on with the survey for a bit longer and analyze, more layers of it, because we have collected quite potential for innovation. So there's quite a lot in there. And then based on that, we'll select some companies to do some workshops with. And those particularly will be on business model innovation, because what we want to look at is how can we accelerate deployment of SLES, and how can we smarten existing local energy systems. And I wanted to emphasize that here we, in the survey and the workshops, we're looking at commercially viable business models. So like Tim said, not pilots, but companies that are already operating successfully. And the good thing is that a lot of survey participants are quite happy to take part in that. I think there's quite a lot of interest in the innovation element in this area. So that's all from us. Thanks very much.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Maria and Tim. You covered a huge amount in a very short period of time. So thank you very much. There's a few questions coming in, and as we've been doing elsewhere, if you can spend a couple of minutes once you've got your breath back, just responding to the questions. But we'll switch straight on to the final panel for today. So, we've had a set of fantastic presentations where we've touched on, all the kind of different aspects which are affecting smart local energy systems, whether it's data or grid connections or community engagement or planning permission, all the kind of barriers that Damien kind of encapsulated, how you're going to finance these things, etc. So what we've got now in our last session is I'm going to, rather than me introducing all the panelists, I'm going to ask them to do a less than 1 minute rapid run through introduction to their company or organization and some of the key issues that they're facing, and then please put in your questions into the chat, and I'll be judiciously selecting the most difficult ones for them and trying to pin them down to get the right answers. So first of all, I'm going to ask Jer Finneran of Smart Metering Systems SMS PLC to do a brief introduction. Jer, over to you.
That's great. Thanks, Guy. Good morning, all. My name is Jer Finneran. I'm a program manager at SMS PLC, where I'm leading on the activities in the UKRI funded Reflex project. The Reflex project is working to create an integrated low carbon energy system on the Orkney Islands. In doing this, it is using SMS's FlexiGrid platform, which digitally interlinks local electricity, transport and heating networks into a controllable overarching system, connecting renewable generation and flexible demand. Orkney Islands is a great location for the smart local energy system, as Orkney has a long tradition of innovation in the energy space and a population that is engaged in the future energy concerns. SMS itself is a fully integrated energy infrastructure company which funds, installs, operates and manages smart meters, energy data and grid scale batteries to facilitate a smarter, greener and more resilient future energy system. We're also involved in a number of initiatives such as the Reflex project to include other carbon reduction assets such as smart EV chargers, domestic batteries and PV systems. So that's just a quick oversight of us. Back to you, Guy.
That's brilliant, Jer. Refreshingly brief as well. Well done. And I love that project. Love the Orkney project. Such an exciting, difficult but important project to come across. Isabel, over to you. Oh, you're on mute, Isabel. That's the first event I've ever got through. We've got an hour without somebody putting themselves on mute.
I knew that'd be one. Thanks, Guy. I'm Isabel from PowerVault, Business Development Manager. At PowerVault, we manufacture intelligent home energy storage systems for domestic and commercial customers. We were founded in 2012, where our primary product focused on storing excess renewable energy and cheap electricity from the grid to help homeowners save money. Since then, we've come a long way and have now designed a smart controller, PowerVault Smart Software, Smart Store. This enables us to take data from energy smart tariffs, as well as weather forecasting, and to produce smart schedules for the battery to optimize the maximum savings for customers, as well as helping the local networks by reducing customers' peak usage at peak times. We also have a cloud-connected virtual power plant, which allows us to aggregate fleets of batteries together to provide local DNO services such as demand-side response, as well as national services such as frequency response to the national grid.
Fantastic. Much better with the mute off. Okay. Actually, well done. Thank you, Isabel. Really, really fascinating company, and great to see these companies developing. Chris, over to you.
Hi, yeah, my name is Chris Langdon. I'm the Development Investment Director with Equans UK, part of the Energy Group. I'm a real estate developer. We place a real importance on users and the community as part of the equitable transition, and especially about how infrastructure and regeneration can enable that. As a business, we're really focused on buildings, including embedded energy, decentralized generation, services, district energy mobility. And specifically in relation to smart local energy systems, I lead the team that is focused on the redevelopment of the former power station at Rugeley, and that sits alongside a Prospering for Energy Revolution project for the decarbonisation of Rugeley as a town of about 20,000 people. And it's really seeing how these large redevelopment projects can catalyse a shift in some of the local thinking about systems, and hopefully make the design a reality in delivery.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Chris. Couldn't find the mute button myself there. Love the Rugeley projects. I'm sure lots of the people watching would have seen those incredible pictures of the cooling towers being demolished relatively recently from memory, and an extraordinary amount of history linked into that. And it's great to see a kind of new chapter being delivered. I'm sure we'll get into the kind of community engagement going on there. And finally, Kelsey from Piclo. Kelsey, over to you.
Hey everyone, I'm Kelsey Devine. I'm a project manager at Piclo. We're an online flexibility platform, so far mostly focused in the procurement of DSO flexibility services. The project started out as innovation about 3 years ago, and we've since been able to commercialize our platform. We're also a partner in the P4 demonstrator project, Project Leo. So our focus is really how we can use platforms to lower the barriers for participation into these flexibility markets, and start to help these new technologies. And as the scale increases, as we're looking at EVs and constraints in the low voltage network, how platforms can ease that participation and start to streamline these flexibility market processes.
That's fantastic. Another brilliant company. It's been amazing to watch the evolution of Piclo over the last few years. Finding new niches, transforming the debate, and growing the whole time. It's a fantastic team there. So it's great to hear about it. Right. So please keep your questions piling in. I'm going to do this very difficult thing these days where I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat to see which questions are coming in and direct them in the right way. One thing I want to so please keep them coming in, and the team will keep them coming in. I'll try and select. So the first thing I'm going to start on is actually, of course, we've talked a lot about the benefits to the energy system, which are really important, but we've had a few questions, and it comes from Tim and Maria's work as well, about the kind of the community benefits, as it were, the kind of extra benefits of these projects, both in terms of getting support for the particular projects off the ground, but also some potential financial benefits. So I'm interested in the projects that's been a big factor, how they've addressed that and what they've learned. So I'll come to Chris first, and then probably to Jer on that, if that's okay.
Thanks, Guy. Yeah, it's a really important aspect, and I think a number of speakers have touched on it. As I said, I'm a real estate background, so from a community engagement point of view, as an industry, we've often been quite poor about selling the benefits of what we do and articulating those. And seeing the two processes at Rugeley sit side by side, what has become really, really important is that articulation of those benefits. So whether it's a bit more of a joined up policy around transport. So, you know, if you're promoting active transport as part of a mobility strategy within the energy system, how do you ensure that the local policies tie up so that developers then contribute to the right pavements or the right type of vehicles to be subsidized, or how that might integrate with car sharing or even electric vehicles. And the things that people play back to us, things about air quality, things about the tree planting, the quality of wildlife, they're actually very supportive of a number of those aspects. We find people broadly fall into three categories: supporters, skeptics, and resistors. And it's the same debate. How would you frame a question and talk about the benefits rather than the barriers? And how do you have that conversation with the community? Because so much of what we're doing relies on the activation of the community to drive the politicians, the policymakers, and the investors in a far more imaginative way that actually looks at how everything connects. And that goes across, you know, your school's agenda, the curriculum, all these kinds of tools that we have actually all been a fundamental part of, you know, delivering some of the more viable aspects of the business models. It's a hearts and minds battle. I think we've got much of the minds, and we just need to keep on cracking on with the hearts.
That's right, and it's interesting you use the word battle. Is it a battle with local communities, or is it is that the right phrase?
I wouldn't say it's a battle with local communities. I mean, communities is a very broadly defined term. I think it is a battle against sort of some forces of opposition, if I can put it that way. You know, one of the first things we encountered when we did the Rugeley project was actually some of the policymakers saying your biggest challenge here is going to be policy saying no. So the kind of more creative stuff about how you integrate systems, it is a battle. And I would say there's probably the vast majority of people are on, you know, the side of green. But there are certainly lots of challenges, and I think it is about mobilising people in what I think is a challenge for everyone.
So other panelists, hold that thought on barriers and policy barriers. Kelsey and Isabel, I'll come to you after I've gone to Joe on that question, because that's something I'm very keen to get in with. So Joe, what about the experience up on Orkney and a kind of buy-in and wider benefits, and how that conversation's had to go?
Yeah, well, Orkney obviously being an island, or a smaller island of circa 10,000 properties, it's a very well connected and interlinked island where the people all, they communicate with each other, and they kind of know what's happening on the island. So for us, community engagement has been central to the Reflex Orkney project. We have 4 full-time community engagement people working within the project who are simply there to communicate to people, to field questions, because I suppose sometimes we can forget that communities are full of people of all different levels of understanding of smart energy systems. And well, energy systems in the first place, they're just getting their heads around the technologies involved in smart energy systems. And then as we try to go to the next level to make them smart and interconnect those systems and maybe unlock different value streams from them by talking about balancing mechanism or frequency response services, we really need to bring the communities with us on that journey. So a lot of we've been doing in Orkney is having focus groups and talking to people and having that kind of essentially developing a brand that people trust and rely in and can easily contact to understand the energy transition that's happening around them and how they can partake in it. So there has been challenges again, with any sort of community, as in it can go with you or can go against you. We've been very lucky in Orkney that the community has been extremely supportive of what it is we're trying to do in Reflex, and ultimately from our side, we're trying to help the community by allowing the community. Community is large businesses, it's industrial businesses, community businesses, charities, individuals, except schools even, and trying to help these people get involved in the energy transition and play their part, but also to benefit from it. So if there's benefits that the big industrial companies can benefit due to scale, purchasing power, etc., trying to bring those benefits and make them available to the individual domestic consumer by acting as their behalf, kind of central in the project. So so lots of learnings and challenges out of it as well, but very positive so far in Orkney.
Brilliant. It's great to hear about it. And let's be honest, there is no energy system or energy kind of set of technologies which doesn't have some engagement issues whether it's building an enormous power station on the Suffolk coast, or a load of wind turbines out in the middle of the North Sea. There's always some challenge for it. Right, so I'm going to take a question that Nigel Hargreaves put in the chat, which are going to ask the panel, come to Isabel and then Kelsey first, but I'm sure everyone will want to dive in on this. Is what are the major barriers holding back rapid developments of smart local energy systems? And I think I'd almost think about it this way: if you were to be made a baroness or a lord for 6 months and you were put in charge of energy policy, what would be the things that you would be trying to crack and to change? Isabel, you first.
Yeah, so I think especially for us, and I'm sure that a lot of renewable technology providers will agree that costs can be a major barrier to customers. One of the main issues we find, and something that we've been trying to lobby to change, is the VAT rates on renewable energy technologies. So obviously these are stuck at 20%, whereas it's 5% if you're looking to go for more carbon intensive fuels such as coal and gas. So really for us, that would be a key issue that we'd be looking to change, and has been something that we've been working on. Obviously, we want to reduce the costs and incentivize customers as much as possible. So yeah, as well as the reduction in VAT, any incentives that would be possible for these kinds of low carbon technologies to make them more accessible for everyone in the market. On top of that, obviously we've made great progress on smart meter rollouts, but really for us, we're to keep that progress going so that we can introduce as many smart tariffs onto the market as possible to create that flexibility, so that the business case for these sort of smart energy technologies, battery storage, EVs, heat pumps, can sort of really take off and really can benefit the network as much as possible by incentivizing customers to use electricity away from the peak times when they are most carbon intensive, to sort of support the local network. And in turn, they will be benefiting themselves as well by lower cost electricities as well.
Brilliant. Thanks. And you've already become a politician and you couldn't do one thing, you had to do 4 things. It's amazing just by that mindset, how that transforms. But absolutely right. It's a totally unfair question across the board. There's so much that needs to happen across the whole system to unlock this potential. Kelsey, what do you see as the kind of key barriers that you'd like to tackle?
I think just the amount of change that's happening and having to keep up with it, but at the same time, I guess being a software company that is probably less regulated and less burdened by some of this policy, the pace that some of the regulated entities have to work at in order to kind of implement this change, and the processes that are needed to go through as a DNO, for example. I know on Leo, some of the new models we're looking at, these things can't just be changed quickly. One of the new market models we're looking at there is looking at generators being able to trade their maximum import and export capacity, but there's obviously the time it takes to generate that idea, but then the time it takes to actually implement that within these larger regulated entities, I think is a slow moving piece. And then making sure that as you're trying to move down the scale of the participants that are working in this, if you are getting to a community scale, being able to simplify that, I think enough that everybody understands what the processes are and how you do participate in these different markets and opportunities as they come along. And so I think that's really what we try and do with our platform as these changes do get implemented. How can we make it simpler for people to participate in these different new markets?
Yeah, it's an evolving picture, and how the energy kind of regulatory system is not a fast moving beast as it were, and can it respond to the kind of potential of digital and smart technology and in that way, which is used to markets with probably a bit more agile, or indeed the regulations trying to catch up with the technology. Chris, do you want to come in, and then I'll ask Jer on this kind of what would you do, and what are the key barriers, and what would you do about them?
I certainly quite like the idea of Lord Langdon. Not sure anyone else would, but I think you kind of touched on it in the sense that policy really needs to drive everything else, including investment, capital allocation. We see with Microsoft, buying locally generated energy recently, that there is willingness in industry. So I think a really ambitious and joined up in the detail set of policies is needed, and we still struggle a bit around that. The other big change, or the other big drive I would push personally, is really recognising resourcing, being clear about the fiscal and other accountabilities of local authority in this whole debate. I know there's discussion around devolution and so forth, but the role of local authorities and local area energy planning, resourcing it, joining it up, is I think an absolute fundamental piece, because that's where citizens really interface with policymakers and where big changes can be made.
And if I'm allowed a brief advert for the Energy Systems Catapult, so as well as the PIFA projects and the other Smart Local Energy Systems project, we've been pushing very hard about the potential of local area energy planning as a kind of backbone of this kind of activity, and indeed much more broadly on decarbonisation. But is your sense, Chris, that even if you introduce that as a kind of mandate, that local authorities still need the people and the capability and to actually deliver that? And are we seeing that as a kind of key challenge in some of these projects?
Yeah, totally. And I think the an interesting thing as well recently with the National Infrastructure Bank looking at what's its technical advisory going to be in relation to sort of net zero. How does the existing resource of the energy hubs and these different whether it's the LEPs, how do all of these organisations work together so you get reinforcement rather than dilution, and capacity, skills, embedding this whole debate as a absolutely essential through every decision, I think still has some way to go. And yeah, I agree, critical challenge, and the people with the skills and the knowledge, we just need to keep on breeding them.
That's right, and maybe that's one for Innovate UK challenge to come up with breeding people who can have got the right skills on this. Jay, what's getting in the way for you guys and your ability to expand?
Well, similar to Chris, I think I bring it back to kind of to resourcing and support, but I rather than focusing on the councils, I would focus more towards the distribution network operators, because ultimately they're key to unlocking smart local energy systems, as in they already access for getting these technologies deployed onto the grid. And ultimately they have a massive task ahead of them as we try to decarbonize the energy infrastructure in the UK. And I feel that, I sometimes feel sympathy for them in terms of the task that they face, but also maybe the resources that they have to try to deliver against that, and resources in the right places to be able to move at a speed that innovative companies or innovative propositions need, because it's not like a smart local energy system can just get up and move. No, we couldn't go to an alternative DNO because there's a DNO in that region, so you're kind of you can't go around it. You have to go work with, and it's dictated by the pace, and their pace is often dictated by the amount of resource and support that they're getting themselves to put in these areas. So I think that's why I would leverage the kind of the strongest barrier at the moment.
It's a really interesting point, because I think this question of how the DNO and the local authority and the other partners, how they interact, is so important, and why the projects in the PIFA project have been testing that, learning it, seeing what works well, what's frustrating, all of those issues. Okay, my final question for all the panelists to go around is, we've kind of talked about the challenges, and we've mentioned policy, etc. But I'm going to finish on a more upbeat note. Is, what are you most excited about in this space? Is there a particular technology? Is there a particular business model? Is there a particular kind of way of these things unlocking? You're not allowed to say your own company, just to dampen any pivot towards that. But just briefly, what are you most excited about in this space? Kelsey, I'll start with you.
Am I allowed to say something related to my own work, I guess? You
give it a go and we'll see whether it's
I guess my role within Piccolo is working on these innovation projects and basically building new markets or new products into the platform that can be traded. And I think it is just a really exciting time to be working in this space. Through these innovation projects, so many different things emerging. I think there's a ton of opportunity with EVs and home batteries, just the scale of assets, but the size of them decreasing. There's a whole bunch of challenges to be facing. So I think there's going to be a lot of change coming in the next little while. And it's quite fun to be part of that journey and design. I also think something that we've seen is the UK is quite a leader in this space. And so part of our kind of next year, and I think other companies may be involved in this too, there's a lot happening in the flexibility space internationally as well. And so to kind of get to showcase what we've done in the UK and kind of use it as a model to take to some of these other countries is quite exciting as well. So I think just all the change and innovation that's happening and getting to kind of be at the front of that and being involved in designing and figuring out how these things work as a tech company, I think is probably what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, it is. Just to bring out one point, and we often forget about this, you know, the UK is in a great position here to exploit the potential because of our, you know, the way our market operates, because our kind of, you know, relative propensity to early adopters, all of this kind of stuff, and these kind of projects. So, you know, that's the big challenge for policymakers and others, is get your market design right so you can unlock the potential here. I'm going to go Chris, then Isabel, then Jer to finish. Chris, briefly, what are you most excited about?
I think what I'm most excited about is that this is really an opportunity to press a bit of a reset button and to really plan out where we want to go next. And as you know, I think many people are shouting more for higher standards of equity, improved well-being, is that we have the opportunity to link the net zero carbon technical agenda with one that's about how we improve quality of life and outcomes for everybody. So I think this is about driving user-centric models and to change and transform markets in a way that actually is very equitable. So that's a real excitement.
That's a really compelling answer. That's fantastic. Thanks, Chris. Isabel.
Yeah, I think just to build on what Chris and Kelsey have said, is just the speed and sort of volume of change that we're seeing at the moment, definitely in the technology space. It's sort of incredible, and how quickly the flexibility markets are evolving and how that's making different technologies come to the forefront. So for us, as a technology provider, it's exciting to see how we can integrate with other technologies, obviously we're battery based, but definitely great to see how we can make all of these systems work together to create sort of net zero packages that hopefully we can deliver nationwide.
This integration, as you say, is incredibly exciting, and everyone's working out where their bit of technology or their model is going to fit with everyone else, and that makes a really exciting time for innovators, and certainly those are the companies we work with at the Catapult, and really, you know, links back to some of the points that Gavin was making right at the start about interoperability on the data side, and again this kind of this digital infrastructure being in place to unlock the potential there. Jeff, final word to you. What are you most excited about?
Yeah, well, I think what most excites me is the kind of the democratization of the energy system going forward. In the fact that, you know, that these benefits, and you know, in the past the consumer might have been seen as the problem, is looking forward, they're seen as the solution, and the consumer is able to get involved in the energy system and ultimately the benefit from it, be it kind of newer heating systems, better heating systems that helping to decarbonize there, but also maybe moving them out of fuel poverty, or, you know, smart EV charging, you know, putting battery plus PV systems in their properties. It's getting the consumer or the end user involved in this energy transition and ultimately the benefit from it. So I think that's that, as I said, democratization of the kind of energy transition from the big businesses and their investments and their benefits that they receive, but also it's now flowing down to the lower levels, which is very exciting. And
do you think they're up for it? Do you think consumers, people, end users, citizens, whatever we want to call them, do you think they're up for this transition?
I've been incredibly surprised at how up for it they are, being honest with you, in terms of interacting with lots of people through the Reflex Orkney project. People are certainly more for than I would have previously thought, being honest, and that has been a surprising outcome from the Reflex project for me. So I think it's, Reflex, Orkney is maybe a bit more advanced in the energy transition in some ways, so people are a bit more engaged. But I think in the rest of the UK, I suspect people will follow that same path.
Well, that's a fantastically upbeat and optimistic note to end on, and I think it's a really exciting commercial challenge and a really great opportunity for loads of the businesses working in this area. Thank you hugely to our panel. I'm going to have to wrap it up there. To Chris, to Isabel, to Jer, and to Kelsey. We've covered a fantastic amount in a short period of time, and I strongly encourage you to get in touch with these projects and these companies and learn more in that way. Huge thanks to our speakers earlier, to Gavin, to Matthew, to Damien, Maria, and to Tim. You kind of got everything you needed to think about in smart local energy systems from the business perspective and some of the academic perspective crammed into an hour and a half. So that was really important to cover. Just last bits of housekeeping before we finish. So there is a virtual exhibition that you can get through. You can go through the main site, and there's 30 exhibitors there. If you want to, really poke and prod all our innovators in this space and some of the projects as well, learn more about it. Hopefully, we've been able to answer most of your questions, and a huge thanks to certainly some of the early speakers who've stuck around and carried on working their way through some of the brilliant questions we've had. But if you want to keep going, some of them will be at the virtual exhibition from 12 to 1:45. And now we've sorted out all the businesses things, somebody's got to finance this endeavor. And this afternoon session is going to look in much more detail at the kind of investability, the financing of smart local energy systems, which obviously links to some of the themes we've thought about the powers of local authorities, National Infrastructure Bank, policy above and beyond all, perhaps market design, and all those questions which Damien and others raised. So huge thank you to everyone involved. We covered it. It was a fantastic session. I learned a huge amount and as excited as ever about this space. Thanks to the organisers, to UKRI and KTN, and have a good rest of the day. Thanks, everyone.